So thanks for joining us. It's really cool that you're kind of coming out of your recluse years, it seems. And I'd love to...
Wait, sorry, what was that word? Reclusierge?
Recluse year.
Recluse years.
Oh, I thought you mean it. I thought that was like a fancy French word, like reclusierge. I don't know that one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, reclusive years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about what you've been up to. And you're working on 3 books right now. So one of them is called Hell Yeah or No, which is a title that very much speaks to us. And yeah, I'd love to hear about that and the kind of philosophy behind that that approach to life.
Okay, you want to hear about that now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hell Yeah or No it's really just a very tiny idea. And it goes like this. That we tend to say yes to too many things. And because of this, we're spread too thin. We're so busy doing average things that we don't have time for the occasional great thing. So instead, I propose raising the bar as high as you can, so that if you're feeling anything less than, oh, hell yeah, that would be amazing, then just say no. By doing this, you will miss out on many good things, but that's okay because your time will be quite empty. So then by saying no to the merely good things, you'll have the time and the energy and the space in your life to throw yourself in entirely when that occasional great thing comes up. So that's it.
I can imagine, just because we also have a content brand, I can imagine the comment section could get pretty ugly at that. What do you think? What kind of responses do you get to that idea? Like, oh, easy for you to say, or something like that. Like what?
Like
and
that.
How do you respond?
Well, no, the only ones that I feel the need to correct people on are when they try to apply this rule to everything. So they say, like, I'll get an email from somebody saying, yeah, I'm just out of college and looking at a bunch of job offers, but man, none of them are a hell yeah. So I'm just saying no to all of them. I'm like, no, hold on. This is a specific tools for a specific situation. It's when you're overwhelmed and you have too many options and you want to prevent drowning, then you use this tool. It's not meant to be used for everything in life. It's not meant to be used for, I think there are different stages. That mean the different stages of your life need different strategies. So if you're at the beginning of your career and you're trying to discover where your lottery tickets are going to hit in life, because it's some skill and some luck, then it's a better strategy to say yes to everything. And it's usually after somebody gets successful, then they're drowning in opportunities. They say that most small businesses don't die of starvation, they drown. They drown in opportunities because they say yes to too many things. So I just think that when you're successful at something, when you're overwhelmed with opportunity, then you use hell yeah or no as a decision-making tool to keep you focused.
Yeah, I'm really glad you made that clarification. Actually, that was a little bit of a question mark for me, but that really applies. I can see that in my life as I'm, attached to my screen are 1,000 sticky notes of all the things I have to do.
Yeah. We'll get into this later, I imagine, about minimalism and stuff like that. But to me, it's kind of all tied together. It's about constantly asking yourself what's really important, what's necessary, and then getting rid of the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's your idea that you've talked about recently of building your life around your values. So I'd like to hear about, first of all, how you pick those values that are important for you. And of course, they're going to be different for everybody at different stages in their lives. And also, I'd like to hear about some of your experiments in arranging your life around those values and how they've gone well, or maybe how they've completely gone wrong or just had really unexpected, ridiculous results.
Okay, cool. I mean, first I should say that I'm not looking for a normal life. So if I say things that sound strange, like a lot of my friends often say, like, why do you feel this need to be so all or nothing, so black or white? It's like, well, because I like exploring the extremes. And in a way, I think it's more honest. So here's why. When I realize that one value has a higher priority than another value, I have to ask myself if I'm living accordingly. So, like, if I say that my kid is more important to me than my phone, it's one thing to say that. But if I'm on my phone when I'm with my kid, then now I'm living, it's like I'm lying with my actions. I'm living incongruently. I'm saying this thing is more important than, I'm saying that my hierarchy is like this, but my actions are proving otherwise. So I feel I need the need to sort that out. Is my phone actually more important to me than my kid? Was I lying about what I said? Or if not, then why are my actions not in line with my beliefs? And so then I'll do some daydreaming or journaling or whatever you want to call it, and I'll figure out how it would look if my actions were in line with my beliefs. I'll usually take each belief system to its logical conclusion. You know what I mean? Like I enjoy taking it all the way to say, if that's really true, then, you know. And so in that tiny example I just said, it would be like, I will, anytime I'm with my kid, I'll just keep my phone off, like completely off, or in airplane mode or silent. Like I will not touch it when I'm with him. He is always more important than the phone. But let's pick a more interesting, like nuanced one. Like if I say that learning and growing is my top value, and I say that, yeah, this is what's most important to me in life. I'm saying, okay, maybe like, here's the health and well-being of my kid. Here's learning and growing. Like I wouldn't sacrifice my kid in the name of learning and growing. But so that obvious exception aside. So if I say that learning and growing is my top value, but I'm living in a comfortable house in a familiar neighborhood with a nice fire in the fireplace in a neighborhood full of people like me, I have to ask myself, is this congruent with my values? I'm not sure. I need to explore that. Like, I could be right now living in a slum in Mumbai and having more of a learning, growing experience. But would the friction of that cause me to grow less in other ways? Like, would the friction of daily life somewhere difficult actually slow my learning, growing progress in other ways? Or would it actually enhance it? So sometimes I'll go experiment with these things. I'll go live somewhere very uncomfortable and see how that does with learning and growing, or at least I'll like daydream about it and make plans of it. Like maybe I don't want to up and move my whole life just for an experiment like this, but these are the kinds of, like, that's a better example of something that I'm always wondering and always exploring. And maybe it helps that I'm not just willing, but enthusiastic to try living an extreme life that's extremely in accordance with my values and beliefs. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I don't think I've ever explained that to somebody before, so I don't know if that was just, vague rambling or not.
Yeah, I mean, if you give some examples, that'd be awesome. Like, what are some experiments that you've done where you actually voluntarily threw yourself into uncomfortable, unfamiliar situations to see what would happen?
I mean, I've moved a lot. So I moved to Singapore 10 years ago and just kind of made this, oh God, I mean, sorry, you're bringing up a whole bunch. I married somebody I had just met to experiment with the idea of commitment. I moved to Singapore with one suitcase to experiment, like understanding a different way of looking at the world. Like the Confucian values of living in Asia are so different from my individualistic American values that it took me a while to adapt to that, and just the whole kind of lifestyle of that. I'll experiment with social things, like if I find myself too loyal to the self-definition of being an introvert, I feel the need to question that. Like I like to break loyalties and question things that I think are true. So if I find myself believing something too strongly, that makes me want to try going against it to see what happens. So I'll go be an extrovert for a while, and I'll go meet with everybody and be around people all the time and experiment with that. And then I tried. I moved to New Zealand to go experiment with 6 years of solitude. Not solitary confinement in a jail, but relative solitude to the rest of my life. And then just now, where I'm living in Oxford, I had been living so minimalistic for so long that I moved here and experimented with the opposite. Like, I got a house and I furnished it. I got a car, like all that kind of stuff that I thought I would never have. I just decided to try it. I have a stocked kitchen now. That's really weird for me. I have like a cutting board. I'd never had a cutting board before. I don't know. So I'm experimenting with it, and I'm not sure I like it. I think I might give away everything again next year and go back to what feels more honest to me, which is to just have only the things that I use every single week. And if I don't use it every week, I really don't need it.
It's funny how many similarities there are between us in this respect. Like this kind of, first of all, investigating our ideas about life to their end points. That's one thing that we've really done a lot over the years. And another part is this experimentation, and travel's been a really big part of that. We left Canada in 2013, I think it was, and then have lived all over Southeast Asia. And now we live in Bulgaria. So it's kind of a similar thing, this minimalist, like away from the Western world. But one thing I've noticed along the way is there are a lot of people who've done something similar, made a business, and had some success with it, and then fallen into some kind of existential crisis of like, okay, well, I've done this, now what? And I'm wondering if that was the case for you as well.
Well, I think it's because you have a blank slate and you have the time. So, an ex was asking me, as I was doing my usual kind of pondering and this kind of stuff we're talking about. Oh, and the fact that I write in my journal like 1 to 3 hours a day, right? Often just daydreaming possible futures and other things I could be doing with my life. I'll just often write about these kind of things. And she said, have you always been like this? And I said, yeah, I've always been. And I had to stop myself going, wait, have I always been like this? No. It actually started not when I sold the company, but when I was free of it, like labor-wise. Like there was a year or two before I sold the company, I basically was just the owner, but I wasn't required to be anywhere or do anything. So I think that's when it all started, because for the rest of my life up until then, I was just like very like, the horse blinders on, like very like head down, very focused, like I am working on this and I'm driven and just all other options can piss off. Like it just, I know exactly what I'm after. I always found it weird when like people would like read blogs. I'm like, you're reading, don't you know what you want in life? What are you reading blogs for?
How do you have the time for that?
Yes, like all this stuff. Like I just felt like I was on an absolute like laser focused mission for like 20 years, 24 years to be exact. From the age of 14 to 38, I was pursuing one single thing. And then at 38, that's when the one thing I had been pursuing for the last 10 years, CD Baby, my company, suddenly I was free of it. And it just felt like this huge blank slate. And my first impulse was to do more of the same. So it's like literally the day after I sold my company, I slept well that night with an empty head. And the next morning I woke up and I was making breakfast and I went, oh, I just had an idea for my next company, and I immediately dove into that. It was called Muckwork, and I spent like the next 3 or 4 months just immediately like programming it, and I hired a manager. I dove into it as this is my next thing. I believe in this completely. And after 4 months, I had to stop myself because I realized that my trajectory would be exactly the same. I would take one company name off my mantelpiece. What do you call that? Yeah, over your door, take one company name off and put a different company name there, but my actions and my life would remain exactly the same. So that's when I realized, like, no, I want to make a real change. So that's when I started more with this kind of blank slate approach to life. And also the habit of deliberately saying no to all the things I used to say yes to, and saying yes to all the things I used to say no to, just to do this like deliberate squelching of previous habits.
There are so many kind of parallels in a lot of spiritual paths as well with this, like the minimalism, the deconstruction work, all of this stuff. Did you actually have that existential crisis at some point after? It sounds like you immediately went back into it, but at some point, did you kind of have any breakdown of being like, this is not what I'm doing anymore. I'm changing as a person?
Oh yeah, a bit. I mean, to me, it was the asking yourself, is there such a thing as too much freedom? So this is what I found myself asking before I sold the company, but that last year where I was no longer necessary. I was the owner. It was very profitable, and it was completely delegated. They didn't need me for anything. So I found myself asking these two questions. What do you do when you don't have to do anything and you can do anything? And where do you go when you don't have to be anywhere and you can be anywhere? It kind of messed me up that it's like I had a lot of money in the bank, and I had just broken up with my girlfriend like a year or two before. I was just completely free, and nobody was expecting me to be anywhere. And I just had this bank account and this time I could just start an ostrich farm in Mongolia if I want to, or, take scuba diving lessons in Iceland, or go learn Arabic in Egypt. It's like, it was like too wide open. And so every day I just kind of kept thinking, or I was overwhelmed with all the different things I could be doing. And maybe that's where this questioning of values comes into it. You have to ask yourself, okay, well, I can do anything. Like, what are my values? Sometimes you can do that just by asking yourself and writing in your diary. You can say, well, these are my values. But it can be more effective to look back at your past and ask yourself, like, when was I happiest and why? Or what seems to be a constant thread through my past? Like a constant thread of what's worked for me consistently in the past. What do I tend to like?
And so what did you arrive at through that exploration? You mentioned your value of learning and growing, that you hold that pretty highly. Was there anything else that you noticed, any other threads?
Happy, smart, and useful. This was a big one. I realized that whenever my life feels unsatisfying, it's because I'm not satisfying all three of those. The intersection of what makes me happy, what's smart, meaning long-term good for me, and what's useful to others. So it's okay to do one or two of those, but I think if you're not doing all three, something ultimately feels unsatisfying. And you could do these combinations. Like, you could do something that makes you happy and is smart, but if it's not useful to others, it just kind of feels, circular, self-contained. You could do something that's useful for others and might be smart, but if you're not happy doing it, then it's like, we can try to talk ourselves out of happiness, but it's kind of like the oil in the machine, like the machine starts to break down if it doesn't have the oil of happiness. So that's a common thread I noticed.
Are you familiar with the Japanese concept of ikigai?
No, I've heard the word, but I never found out what it means.
It's pretty much exactly that. So it's a Venn diagram that is the overlap of what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so...
Damn, I thought I came up with that.
That's another funny thing I've noticed too. Like the more time you have to reflect, the more kind of, well, if they all feel like brilliant, unique ideas, and then you recognize like brilliant and unique people have also come up with those things too. So it's kind of it's complementary, I think.
That's what freaked me out about when I was 42 when I read my first book on Stoicism, and I went, holy shit, I thought it was just me. Like, this is my quirky, weird Derek philosophy I've been living by since I was like 14 years old. Like all this whole thing about making life deliberately tough on yourself to strengthen yourself for the unknown future. Like all this stuff is like my quirky philosophy I've been living by for 25 years. And holy shit, it's got a name. It's got an ism. It's 2000 years old. That's amazing. Yeah, that blew my mind to realize it wasn't just me.
Yeah, that's really the same for me as well. That's been one of those things that has been uncovered after years and years of practice and ignorance. Yeah.
It's I think it's really interesting to look at these kinds of patterns, insights or whatever, and recognize how common they are in history or in different wisdom traditions. There's something about it that kind of it's like it's our common humanity. If you look deep enough into the abyss, something looks back, and it's often similar things for people. Like in some ways we're not so unique. I think it's very humbling in a positive way,
I think about did you guys know that, sorry, this was new to me, maybe you've known this forever, that eyeballs evolved in nature like 40 different unrelated times. That it's not like if you look at a squid and their eyeballs are kind of similar to ours, it's not like, oh, we have some common parent with eyeballs. No. It's the whole idea of two eyes filled with liquid and a lens and a retina and all that, like independently evolved like 40 different times. So it's like nature over and over and over again has decided this is a way to see predators and prey and to get visual information. It's reinvented the same way almost over and over again. That's really cool. And so I think about that with what you just said philosophically. It's like you could just sit all by yourself, completely disconnected from the world, come up with something and find out, it's the same thing that everybody else came up with because maybe it's the logical conclusion.
Yeah, there's an interview we did a little while back with Dean Radin who talks about real magic. And he goes over experiments that have been shown to, when animals and humans come up with ideas all over the world at the same time. Like one example was this flock of crows. I think it was in England, and they all suddenly gained the knowledge all at once of how to open the milk caps on the milk that was being delivered to everyone's homes in the morning. And like across the country, all of them learned it all at once.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
The brand new Future Thinkers members portal is now live. Develop your sovereignty and self-knowledge with our in-depth courses, get access to our weekly sense-making calls, join the Q&As with past podcast guests, and much more. Become a Future Thinkers member today at futurethinkers.org/members. To stay up to date with new episodes, subscribe to Future Thinkers on your favorite platform. And leave us a review or a like. It really helps out the show. And don't forget to share this episode on social media. Enter the Future Thinkers giveaway and win our brand new community membership, including in-depth courses, private calls, and more, as well as a supply of Qualia, a complete cognitive upgrade for your brain. To enter the contest, simply go to futurethinkers.org/giveaway and sign up for our mailing list to instantly get our 50-page guide on how to adapt to the future. There are many ways to increase your chances of winning. Enter the competition today.
This episode is brought to you by Qualia, a nootropic supplement that helps support mental performance and mood. To get 10% off, use the code FUTURE at checkout. And to learn more about neurohacking, visit futurethinkers.org/neuro.